Welcome to SD Media Pros, the San Diego chapter of MCAI. Yay! Very happy to have you here. I want to thank Phil Ferrari for opening his facility to us. This is a wonderful facility. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yes. And as you can see, our website, ever present. We try to update this as often as possible. If you get past the first page, you'll see that you can get to the videos that are being recorded, and we're recording these tonight. They're just strictly documentation, nothing fancy, but if you want to take a peek, you can scan through it. Everything's available. If you see right here, if I were to go home, even here, right at this top mark right here, you can get through to the member link, and here is the archive of the videos, and these have been going on for 2 years now, pretty consistently. We don't videotape the celebrations, but so you have to come to the parties. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, you know. Yes, and I do need to thank Primetime Media Group for sponsoring the recordings, the equipment that we use. I donate my own time to put that together, but Primetime Media Group sponsors the videos with the use of the equipment, etc. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. With that in mind, actually, in March, which is the very end of March, you could back that mic down just a little bit. It's getting a little much. We're going to do a talk on media buying. So I do hear this every once in a while. People get an opportunity to produce a commercial, and then they just end up handing it off. And they'd love to be able to take the next step, or at least be able to have some level of control when it comes to buying the media. And Rod Hunter, the owner of the company, 35 years media buying, Nicole Tiber will be with him to help fill you in on how to take control of that. And really, professionals will get a better rate from you than if you walked in the door yourself, because it's just it's almost an unwritten rule, and then the negotiating power comes into play with that. So that's in March. Soon there'll be an update on the website for all the different meetings through the rest of the year. Now, part of our tradition is a horror story to start off the meetings, and Michael Bergemeyer is ill tonight, so he handed the mic off to me, and he has quite a few, and unfortunately I have a crude one for myself. I shot a motivational speaker, very professional outfit, lights, microphones, and from the very beginning we said we can get a feed off the board, right? And my client was saying, well, they're very professional, you don't have to, because I'm saying, I should put a mic on you. I should put a separate mic on you, and we'll know that we've got it. So, no, these guys are total pros, no problem, and for all intents and purposes, they looked very professional. And they were. The feed we got off the board had the automatic gain on it, and it had a limiter compressor on it. So it was bang, and his first syllable of his words were clipped. There was nothing we could do about it. It started. We tested the mics. Everything sounded fine, but you get into it and you go, okay, so, oh my God, the research I did to find some solutions along those lines, ultimately I still had to go, even after I did all the plugins and everything like that, still had to go in there and manually fix it. Oh my God, it was horrible. But, so, don't trust anybody else's equipment. Just don't. Even if they say we're pros, just don't. I could have hidden a microphone on him, would have been golden, never a worry. And frankly, I don't run into those problems because I usually control everything. So anyway, then one little quick tip and trick that I'd like to show you all. This is something that I pointed out in another meeting a long time ago. And if you see the cross, if you're a Mac person, and I don't think enough people use use this, but I use this all the time. You see up here, there's Compressor, there's Photoshop, there's Premiere Pro, and sometimes you have a JPEG, you don't know what you're going to do with it. If you double click it in a Mac, it's just going to open in the preview, right? So you just take it up here, drop it on there, and boom, it opens your program. Just like that. There you go. That's something I did for the website. And you do that by command dragging the application to the window. And then it appears in the top of every window. It's just a huge time saver. And with that, I would like to move on to Marianne with a talk about new members. Marianne. No, come up here. Come up here, because if you talk about it back there, it will not be documented on our wonderful documentation. Yeah. So.
Okay, we have 3 new members that signed up this month. Yay. I'm going to ask you to stand up so everyone can see what you look like. Eric Crosby, Lauren O'Connell, and what's the matter? Jeff? No, Kyle. Kyle Sullivan. Yay! Chris is not a new member. He's been a member for a while. Okay, Chris, stand up. And if you would like to be a member, you can go on the website and sign up, or you can sign up with me. Also, we do ask that you register for these meetings when you come, so we know how much food to get. So that's why we ran out of food, because not everyone registered today. So if you could do that when you go online, register as a member if you are a member. If you're not a member and you register as a member, you still have to pay when you come. Registration or being a member has its benefits. One is, instead of paying $15 or $20 for a meeting, you're paying about $7 for the year. So that's a perk. And there are other perks like insurance benefits and hotel benefits, etc.
Reduced prices at Kinko's, or well, it's not Kinko's anymore. FedEx Print, yeah. I have definitely used that. It's like at least 10%. 20%, even better. With that, how about Connie come up and say, fill in the membership on the international level.
Thank you. Hi. We have had a hell of a year, and not in a good way. About mid-June, the web host switched servers, and all of our renewal notices stopped going out automatically. So we had 3 months of no renewal notices going out. So if you even think that your membership has expired, it probably has. And you need to get back online and renew your membership. It will pick up from whatever date you sign up again, it will pick up from there, and you won't lose anything. It'll start over again. And then just when we thought everything was getting better, the website was hacked. And 40 of the websites that were hosted by this particular company, all of us who are legacy people on the old software, all of our websites were down for about 2 weeks completely. And we are not back to full functionality yet. And our membership renewal notices are still not going out. So we have switched over to MailChimp in the temporary, while we're waiting, because we have to get to a new website. We're going to be on a new website within 90 days. And then we'll have full functionality, and renewal notices will go out on time, probably automatically this time. So that will be a good thing. But please check your promotions tab. If you're checking your email in Gmail, please check your promotions tab. It's not being delivered to your primary tab. It's going to your promotions tab. So please check that. If you are checking your email in Outlook and you have your images turned off, I can't tell if you've opened an email or not, so I don't know if you've been informed of your lapsed membership. So please jump on the website, even if you think that you might be a member or a lapsed member. Just go on and log in and click on My Memberships, and boom, it'll tell you whether or not you're a member officially or a lapsed member. So we are investigating. We have a couple of companies that we've been working with to get bids for the website change. The company that we were with, what was going to cost us $2,500 to upgrade to their new platform is now $7,000. So we're not going to take that offer, that generous offer, and we are looking for another solution. And we have a couple that we've already looked at, and I'm going to send out a bid list to a member up in Orange County who does Joomla stuff. But we're going to get at least 3 options, and within 90 days we'll have a brand new website. And so, and we'll hopefully the renewal notices will be going out on time. So thank you.
Good. Thank you, Connie. That's good to hear that the international website is going to be updated soon. I suppose bidding on that is open. If somebody in San Diego wanted to bid on that.
Just contact me and I'll get the list of the modules and things that we need.
Okay. All right. We'll put a little blurb on our website for that. Next, I've shifted roles from VP to sponsorship director, and luckily Joe Castano put me in touch with Eddie, and Eddie's going to help us out initially with a mailing. We've done some mailings in the past, or just some postcards. It just helps to communicate the word to get it out. So, and Eddie has a facilities building. So, Eddie, you got a couple minutes? You want to say hi?
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Eddie Lane, how many of you don't know me? Oh my God, it's getting rarer and rarer to find people that don't know me. Eddie Lane, I own Vision Pulse Events and Meeting Center just down the street from here, and it sometimes behaves like it is a movie production studio. However, the rumors are that we are expanding, and we're adding on a movie production studio that will sometimes behave as if it's an event and meeting center. So, we're working on that. I'm going to throw it out there, San Diego first. I'm looking for any general contractors that might be interested in bidding on helping to build out a wonderful studio like that. It is not my studio, it's your studio. This is a collaborative effort. Let's see, what else do I say? Okay. Anybody here like to have fun? If you don't, you're probably in the wrong room, because everybody's here fun, right? I also own an adventure company, travel and adventure company called the Bucket List Travel Club, and it's related to film because who wants to go on a vacation and produce a cool movie while you're doing it? Wouldn't that be? We don't have monkeys climbing around in the trees over here. You got to go down to Costa Rica, and you got that inherently there. So we're working on that kind of project too. So if anybody, let me know. God, this thing misbehaves, doesn't it? Okay. All right. I think that's it. And I'm an Aquarius.
Wow. So we're a dating website now, too. Okay. Thank you very much. Eddie, Phil, would you like to come up and talk about your facility, your wonderful facility? Phil Ferrari, everyone. Yes.
Thanks. Hello? Phil Ferrari, Ferrari Productions. This is my space here. There's a few people here that share my space. It's not mine, it's also ours. But it is available for rent, and it's depends on your needs. The price varies, so let me know about that. And we have a conference room. And does everyone know where the restrooms are, by the way? On either side of the hallway over there. And that's it. I'm glad everybody could make it tonight.
Tell us about some of the work you do for your customers.
Thanks. So I do all business-to-business, instructional media, promotional media, and a lot of commercials for the Travelers Channel at the moment, which is an in-room hotel channel. And we do anything from green screen here to webinars to stand-up promotional material, things like that. So try to keep very busy here. We use Premiere and Final Cut. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, Mark Masonuv. Mark is starting we're trying to, as best we can, be a what's it called? Not a collaborator, but where you gather, information. So here it is. News you can use.
Thank you very much. Just little tidbits here from the world of news. The business that we're in is always in the news. Little tidbits here and there. And these are some things that you might find interesting. You take home, look into it. One of these, how many of you have an iPhone 6 or 6 Plus? How many have a 5? How many don't have an iPhone? Excellent. Instagram has a new app that they created not very long ago called Hyperlapse. Have you heard of this? The Hyperlapse link. You can turn your phone into a time-lapse phone. And you can shoot video with it, time-lapse, driving down the freeway, look at cars going by, and you can run it from 2 to 12, whatever that means, speed, and it smooths everything out. It makes it look cinema quality right there on your phone. And then you can save it, email it to yourself, put it on Facebook, whatever. It's a great little app, Hyperlapse from Instagram. You can put on your phone. If you have the 6, you don't need it, but, something to take a look at. Drones. Anybody hear about the drone in the news lately? Yeah, so... some knucklehead who had a beer thought, I'm in the intelligence department, I'm going to fly a drone into the White House. And I bring that up because the drone rules are lagging. The FAA is trying to get the drone rules done. But, if one person can get those kind of moving, who would that be? That'd be the president, who said, we really got to get the drone rules going when they crashed them into my house. So that was great for those who were looking for drone rules, because that really is huge. Anybody who went to... Vegas CES this year, it's just like this drone alley, I guess, and there's drones everywhere. It's coming. They're not going to stop it. So that's going to come probably sooner than later. And on that side note, the maker of that, the Phantom drones, DJI, is now going to make all drones incapable of flying in that space. As a result of this, that just came out, I think, today. And the drones themselves are supposedly not supposed to be able to fly near airports anyway. It's supposed to shut off. Now, I don't know if that's true, but supposedly that's supposed to happen. So, as a result, you can see what happens when you crash a drone into the White House. Things start moving. Things start happening. So that's good. And then just on a closer note to home, those of you who see a movie industry in San Diego coming back here to be beneficial to you, article in the paper about Francine Filsinger, the head of the San Diego filmmakers, talking about trying to get a film commission booted back up. So keep watching that. That's starting to get some traction. Back Francine, if that's something you're looking to do. Talk to Dave Roberts, the county supervisor, Kevin Faulkner, and trying to maybe get a film commission back up and running to maybe bring more work down here, which hopefully would translate into more work for everybody else. So anyway, those are some tidbits of news you can use. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Mark. All right, let's start our program. Marianne, would you come up and introduce our guests this evening? And you guys can come on down, I'd say. Take a seat, get your computer ready, or how do you want to... There we go. So, okay.
Okay, I'll introduce Travis first because I don't know the other guy. Augie does. Travis and I were in a film competition. We were both up for screenwriter. He won. And I was really mad. But then his film, I laughed so hard I peed my pants. It was so funny. And I have been in love with him ever since and stalking him. And so glad he's here because before it was just, another screenwriter just like me. But he's actually done some really good work. So I'm so excited that he is here and you're all here to hear him talk about how he does his work because he's brilliant. Travis Chesney.
I'm not sure I can live up to that introduction. But for one screenwriting award, I'd be introducing you up here, Marianne. So I didn't bring any visuals or anything, but that's what writing's all about, right? I can paint pictures with my words. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Travis Chesney. I born and raised San Diego. I grew up in Fallbrook. I lived in Los Angeles, worked in the industry for about 10 years, and then had enough of that and came back down here to the city that I love. So I was part of the development crew for Journeyman at CBS. I developed an independent pilot for Fox that they did not like. They loved the idea because it was a conservative, liberal, odd couple, and they're like, cool, a conservative protagonist. This is going to be great, and it didn't really work out the way they liked it. So, anyways, and then I've worked as a reader and a script doctor for many, many years. I've had a script option, and now that I'm back down here, still doing the writing thing, and I'm absolutely loving it. So hopefully I have some knowledge to impart to everyone tonight. I'm basically going to cover a lot of the basics of screenwriting without getting into format and all that other stuff. But one of the things working as a reader and working as a script doctor, you constantly see the number of mistakes that everyone makes. And I know that that's something you go online, you look up screenwriting help, you look up screenplay help. The first thing you find is the top 5 mistakes, the top 10 mistakes, and well, they're up there for a reason. As a reader, I would say out of 100 scripts that I got, 70 had the same problem, and then the next 20 had the second problem, and then the other 10 you pass on because you don't want to risk yourself on anything. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll start out with a couple quick hits, and then we'll cover a few things about scripts, and then I'll answer a few questions if you haven't gotten bored of hearing me talk. So. First things first, like I said, some of you, this may be old hat, super old information for some of you getting into it. You may be new, or maybe if I say something, you're like, my script is 240 pages. That's a bad thing. And, but some people, they don't miss it. When I first started writing, I don't talk about that screenplay because it's really, really, really bad. And then someone took the script, and then they basically paid me for the idea, and they made it into Employee of the Month, starring, what's his name, Dax Shepard, and so on, or whoever. So, or what's his name, Dane Cook. Yes, they all blend in together. So, first things first. There we go. Cool. First things first. And like I said, the thing I just covered is the number of pages. That was a huge problem. It happened way more often than I ever expected. I've got scripts. I got a script that was 45 pages for a feature-length film. And I'm talking about, this is all going to pretty much cover feature-length, but it can apply to short films, a lot of the concepts, commercials, and so on. But I got one script that was 45 pages. I got a script that was 285 pages. And it was just, someone just passed it along and said, this is my script. I couldn't possibly cut a single scene. And after reading it, I was like, oh, yes, you could. Very, very easily. But that is a huge problem. You want to aim for that magic target between 90 and 130 pages. Again, right in there is the best way to go. I know sometimes it seems, oh, well, this is, whatever excuses. No, 90 to 130. I pretty much leave that as an industry standard. Second thing, I'm not going to get into format. There's programs that'll do that for you. I don't need to tell you that. There's Trelby, which is free and great. And then there's Final Draft, which is even greater, which is all these amazing features. It'll read your script back to you, which I don't use, but it seems really great. So, like I said, there's plenty of programs to do that. Please use them. Please use 12-point font. Please use Courier. That is, again, it seems so obvious, but we had somebody who was all like, I've got a 120-page script. Yeah, well, it's in 14-point Times New Roman. This is like I cut it down to 60 pages, and so, again, it happens. Now we'll get into the less basic options real quick. Like I said, I'm going to cover the little quick things. Very first thing, and this happened, gosh, I want to say 40% of scripts. The very first page of the script looks like Great Expectations. It is one block of text. You've got to avoid that block of text. I know you get so excited and you want to lay out the whole story for everybody. You want to just get into how great your character is, how awesome this world is they're about to, conquer or whatever. You've got to break that text up. That happens so many times, and people would put in a paragraph describing their first character, Mike, 33, he works at a mall and he hates his mom and he wants to be a plumber, but he actually works at a construction company and his hair is blonde, but then he changed it to brown because, no, stop, please. But again, I'm almost reading from stuff I've already read. Avoid that block of text. Break it up with some dialogue. Break it up with even separate lines. You can't, if you can say it in less words, say it in fewer words. Another big one, again, quick. Avoid direction in your script. Unless you're making the script yourself and you got your production company and you're running the whole thing, you're not the director. You're not the music coordinator. You're not the, acting or casting director, any of that. And that is another big problem. And people will go in and say, Mark, Billy Bob Thornton walks in, and then this camera swoops down, and Flight of the Valkyries plays, and it's all like, well, you've just spent like $80 million in 8 words. Fantastic. Thank you for doing that for me. But the camera issue is extremely common because that's how we all think. We're all filmmakers. So you always think, oh, well, camera sweeps right, or pans left, or we move in on action. That is not your job. You're a writer. Let the director decide that. They will picture it. If you describe it properly, they'll picture that in their mind. And then again, you never know if there's a better shot that they may come up with. Next quick hit, get the story going. Get the story going. By page 3 of a feature, I should already know who your main character is. I should already kind of have an idea of what's going to happen. I should be hooked. By page 15, that person better be on their journey. They better be well on their way at that point. I've had scripts, again, 30, page 40, page 50. I had one where a main character didn't come in until page, I want to say 35, and then stuck with it for the rest of the script. It was all about like this family and like his brothers and sisters. And I think the person was like, okay, cool, I'll build the backstory, and then I'll see him, and he comes in and his family finds him again, and now it's all about him. And I'm like, who is this guy? I don't care who he is. So usually if a reader will know within 2 pages if your script is pass or fail. Then they'll check again at 3, then they'll check again at 5, then they'll check again at 15, and then usually halfway through. So all of these, it's almost like a YouTube video is kind of the rule that we used to use is, if you're not hooked by the first second, you click away. Then 3 seconds, you're out. Then 5 seconds, then 8 seconds, 15. Those are all your little base points of people losing interest, just like that. So you want to make sure you hook people from that first page in. And I'm not saying start your story with Megatron blasts up out of the desert, New York City explodes, and Godzilla steps in. No, you don't have to go big to grab someone's attention. And we'll get a little bit more into that later. And my last quick note, genres are genres for a reason. And this happened as recently as just a couple days ago where someone pitched a script idea to me and they're like, you're going to love this. I'm not kidding you. They said, it's a romance, action, comedy, horror, superhero movie. Okay, cool. And she's like, well, it's like the Avengers, which is all those things. If you had just said that, if my movie's like the Avengers, you're a step in the right direction. Maybe not the best way to go, but you're in the right direction. There's always variations to a genre. Again, it seems obvious, but if you've got an action movie, of course it may be funny, it may be sad, there may be romance. If it's an action movie, it better have romance. But there's always other elements. So just pick one that is the main element. Focus on that. That is super, super important, especially if you're selling your script. When you are pitching to somebody, when you're telling someone an idea, it's the same thing. You've got to hook them right away. When I pitched the idea to Fox, it was basically, it's a conservative, liberal, odd couple. That was it. And they were like, okay, great. Send us a script. If I went on and said, well, okay, John is super afraid of the world, but he's going to fall in love with this hippie whose name is Skylar, and she works for a penguin conservatory, and then a real estate. No, I mean that's like I don't even want to hear that. I wrote that. I don't want to hear any more about it. So those are all the basics. If you stick to those, you're going to be better than 75% of the scripts out there. So you're already ahead of the game. Congratulations. All right, so yeah, right. I'm excited too. But I'm still not going to read your scripts. No, I'm kidding. I'll read them all. All right, so now I'm going to cover a few things, break down one by one, and hopefully, fill the time that I got to fill. So we'll break it down little by little. We'll start with scenes. the basic, your skeleton of any scripts, and the pitfalls of so many people. Scenes, again, it seems obvious, but scenes, the most common problem, they run too long. They go on and on and on and on. And this is why I always recommend outline your scripts. I know some people, it's like you get one idea in your head and you build around it. Maybe it's a line of dialogue. Maybe it's a character. Maybe it's, you went to the Grand Canyon and you were inspired and you're writing a story about that. That's great. That's awesome. Get inspired. Get excited about writing. I will say, you've got to write constantly. I'll probably say it 5 more times before I'm done tonight. But whether or not it works for you, I recommend giving outlining a try. You've got to put the work in on your script. Build the foundation. Build the framework. The script will grow around that. That goes for characters. It goes for scenes. Again, I'll say it again as we keep moving on. It goes for dialogue. If you build that framework, it makes life so much easier. It doesn't have to be, okay, scene 1, this happens. Scene 2, this happens. It could be something as basic as you start with, okay, Jennifer works at Hot Dog on a Stick. She dropped out of high school at age 14. Why did she drop out of high school? Well, her dad left for the Army, and her mom left to go be an improv teacher. Whatever it is that you decide to build, that gives you something, and you can always go up from there. The second biggest problem with scenes is duplicate scenes. Did you already write this? That also happens all the time, where I'll go through, the character fights a bad guy, especially in action movies. In action movies, if you love those, be mindful of your scenes of when you're throwing obstacles in the way, because they'll think something's completely different. I go, well, let's see, your hero went to China, he fought some ninjas, he jumped over the Great Wall, then he went to New York, and he fought some gangsters, and he jumped over some taxis. Wait a minute. And then you go over and you realize how similar these scenes are. When you're writing, it's really easy to get comfortable, to kind of fall into a rhythm, using the same words, the same dialogue, writing the same scenes over and over and over again. If you find yourself in that trap, if you find yourself repeating yourself as you go through, my recommendation, go back and take a look and add layers to your characters. That's always a good start. I like working and basically creating the characters and giving them free run of the script. Some people it's the scene, some people it's the locations, whatever it is for you. If you find yourself repeating it over and over again, go back, build some more layers, and something new will pop up. Another thing and one more thing about scenes before I move on. Look at each scene. This is why outlining is so important. Look at each scene and ask yourself, why is this scene in the movie? Again, it seems like an obvious question, but pull it out, see if the movie changes or if it stays the same. It's the same advice I give about a protagonist. It's the same advice I give about any character. Pull them out of the script. See what happens. If you've got a scene in there and you've pulled it out and nothing changes, well, the scene doesn't belong there. It's an easy way to fix it. If you've got a protagonist that's moving through a story, you pull him out, nothing changes, you got to work on your protagonist. You can never, hurt your script by pulling something out of it for a while and seeing if the person lives or dies. If you pull out an organ they don't need, then they'll probably be okay. So, not that I'm recommending you do surgery on anyone, but all right, let's move on to dialogue. I love dialogue because it's like, no, I actually do love dialogue. I was trying to do a really lame joke there, but I do. It is one of my favorite things to write. And the biggest advice I can give for dialogue is watch movies. Again, so basic, but watching movies is the best way to kind of see exactly how people talk. Getting out there, starting conversations with people is great, and I thought, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I was a film student. How do I want to write better dialogue? I'll go out and I'll start conversations with people, which on the one hand is great, and on the other hand, most people, it's just the standard, hey, how's it going? I'm good. How are you? Fine. So, have you seen that movie? And then you end up talking about the movie anyways. But with dialogue, My biggest problem that I ran into, and this was something that hurt my first script, it hurt my second script, is subtext. And this is something, as a reader, it's the same thing. I could go over show, don't tell, which, that's, if there is a rule for writing, it's show, don't tell. But subtext seems to be the bane of so many people's existence. So many people, when you're writing dialogue, how do I get some good subtext in there? How do I get my character to say something without saying it? It's so much easier if they're just like, I'm mad at you. I'm super sad that this is going on. I'm so happy. But that's not how people talk. It really isn't. And that's where, one, movies come in, and there you get a little more from real life. Subtext can actually be something that can truly benefit your script. It's a tool. It's not a hindrance. Go ahead and take your characters. Find out what they want in a scene. What is their reason for being there? If it's characters in a scene, they want something. Even if they don't want something in that scene, they want something in your script. If they don't want something in your script, they probably don't belong there. Everyone's got an objective, and they feel certain ways about that objective. And so it's super important. Use that as a tool. I'm like, that's not me. That's not my voice. Well, it is a little bit, but use that as a tool. And that's something that changed my entire writing style. Instead of going in and looking at a line and thinking, okay, how do I change I'm angry to not saying I'm angry, but being angry? Look at actions. You've got actions that you can use. I kick over this table, something's wrong. It's as simple as that. And your characters will often dictate that for you. Get down to the basic emotions. How would they be? Like, what makes your character angry? What makes your character sad? What makes them happy? One of the things I love about the movie Amélie, and it's only works because it's unique, is in the very beginning they talk about, this is, Amélie's mother, she loves getting out of the pool and she hates whatever. And then the father, loves his garden, knows whatever. The reason that works is because they're not saying exactly something emotional or generic about the character. It's very specific. And they wouldn't know that unless they've made those decisions. And from those specific decisions, you can build a character. I can jump ahead to characters. Why not? The big thing about characters, and that was I would say the second biggest problem, the first biggest problem being formatting, the second biggest is characters. And again, one is you see the cliche characters, you see your just completely cut and dry flat characters. That happens all the time. So I'm going to cover a couple other things. One, who's familiar with the term Mary Sue or Gary New? All right, cool. Well, then he knows, so I'm not going to explain it to her. No, a Mary Sue is basically a character that you've made so great and kind of like it basically epitomizes all of the things that you wish you were or the good things about yourself. A character that is so perfect and so amazing and so flawless that nobody cares at all what happens to them regardless of anything. This happens all the time. Nobody wants to make their character bad. Nobody wants to take something or someone they've created and make them unlikable. I've fallen into that trap 100 times. I have seen it in almost every script I've ever read that was a pass. Every character that follows that, because it's hard. It's hard. You take all this time. You write something that's near and dear to you. You create this character who's got all these facets. And, whether they're a college student who went on this adventure and they have all these deep things, if they don't have a flaw, who cares? Flaws are so important. And again, not a hindrance. They're not. They're a tool. They're going to make your writing easier. Take your character. If you've got a character and you're trying to think, shoot, I don't know, I'm kind of bored by him. Or people are bored by him. Or he goes into a scene and he's just like, gosh, he just kicks the bad guy in the face and then gets out of there. Awesome. Think about ways you can make your character unlikable. Think about things that, if it comes down to it, you can't think of anything. Think of things that you just don't like. Maybe you don't like people that are arrogant. Maybe you don't like, people that don't care about animals. It could be something as simple as that to start you off. Maybe it could be people who talk way too much. It's possible. But, again, flaws are so key. So key to your character. One big thing, and this is not a flaw, and this is something specific because it gets under my skin, and this is going to sound weird, but don't make your character sympathetic. I know it sounds weird. You want to sympathize with a character. Don't make them sympathetic. I'll give you an example, and this is used in the movie Shrek. When Shrek was being developed, the very first idea was the idea they used, which was that he's an ogre who's happy with himself. He's happy with who he is, he's comfortable with who he is, and he doesn't care, if the rest of the world doesn't approve of him. Okay, well that seems good, where's the flaw? Well, here's the thing, is he doesn't care. If the world rejects him, well then he's going to reject the world. If people are going to reject him, he's going to reject them. And he puts up emotional barriers, and all of a sudden the story is about peeling back those layers. He'll never grow because he's put those barriers up. Well, while they're developing this idea, one of the executives comes along and says, hey, why don't we change all that and we make him someone who wants to be a knight? And they're all like, oh my gosh. The lead writer of Shrek is totally escaping right now, but he's like, oh my God, no, we're going to lose all of our money. And so he submitted this whole new story idea about Shrek wanting to be a knight, and it was all him sitting in this swamp going, oh, I just want to grow up to be a knight, and why am I not a knight? And I want to be in a castle, and be cool. And people hated it, absolutely hated it. And the movie would have been ruined because they tried to force sympathy. They tried to force that woe is me on the character. They tried to say, okay, feel bad for him, and that never works. We get right back. Give flaws to your character. If your character is unlikable and they somehow overcome that flaw, people will love it. People love to see that. People love to see a character that you hate turn and change and develop. That's what characters are supposed to do. A couple mini tips. First off, the hero's quest. I was familiar, send your hero on a quest, right? Don't do that. Don't do it. Just throw that out the window. I hate it. Because one, real people aren't heroes. They're not. They're real, ordinary, regular people. Second, people don't go on quests. They don't. That's not something that happens every day. I know in the generic term works, but if you think about it that way, if you're trying to make your person someone who's not necessarily an anti-hero, but not heroic, try to make it someone who's not just going out there to get a goal. What do they really want? What are they really going after? And it adds, you get a free extra layer to your character. So, 4 questions that are the basics. That's what I was taught. I went to New York Film Academy, which is awesome. Did anybody else go to New York Film Academy? Good on you guys. Oh, then it was amazing. It was the most brilliant school in the world, and I can go on about it. But actually, when I went there, they had just started their screenwriting program, and it was myself and 7 others, and then 6 dropped out. And so the other student, who is Mohammed Diab, who is he's actually very, very well-established screenwriter and filmmaker in Egypt. He basically had a visa that says if I don't complete the program, they send me home. And I can't do that right now because I don't have money to go home. I've bought an apartment. And so he asked me, he's like, well, do you still want to do the program? Sure. So the 2 of us went through the entire screenwriting program at New York Film Academy, with people coming in and out as we went. But one of the things they taught me is 4 basic questions about a character. 1, who is he? Who is he or she? Simple, right? You should always be able to describe your character in 1 sentence and expound on them in so much more. If you're having trouble doing that, try doing it with your significant other. Say, okay, I could describe them in 1 word, but if I do that, they'll probably get upset. But you probably can. If you think of somebody you know, if you think of a family member or someone important to you or a friend, you could probably describe them in 1 sentence because you know everything about them. You know their backgrounds. You know why they are the way that they are. Use that. Use that development with your characters. Describe them in 1 sentence and then go on much, much further. Second question, what does the character want? It's easy enough. And it's not just, oh, they want to, escape. They want to blow up the Death Star. They want to they want to kill Bill, Those are all great wants, but get into what they really want. All these questions are good, but it's about expanding and going deeper. The characters always want more. Third question, why can't they have what they want? Hey, you want to write a script? So here you go. Figure out a character, find out what they want, find out how to take it away from them or keep it away from them. Boom, you're done. 3-act structure. It's that easy. I love it. Why can't they have what they want? What obstacles are in the way? What stops them from getting what they want? That is super, super, super important, and it's linked to the fourth question, what will happen if they don't get what they want? Most screenwriting teachers and so on, they'll say to you, what happens when they get what they want? What happens when they accomplish their goal? My recommendation, flip that. What happens if they don't get it? What are the stakes? Are they high enough? And I'm not talking about that, again, exploding New York and blowing up Godzilla and all that. The stakes can be high enough if your character cares about them. I mean, think about The Lion King. I mean, honestly, it's a patch of land in Africa, which we all want to be great, but in the end, it doesn't affect our day-to-day lives if some lion is ruling over a bunch of animals. But the character cares about it. The character cares about the people there or animals there or so on. The character has family there. The character, if they can't go back, it'll result in the death of Simba's family. I love using The Lion King. I'm a Disney nut. I can't help it. But that's the big thing. What are the consequences if your hero fails? And those consequences, they don't have to be dire. They don't have to be deadly, but they've got to be important. Let's see. And then, of course, again, those questions are a start. Start with those questions. Go on deeper. Where am I at on time? I feel like I'm blathering on and on. Cool. Good. All right. I'm going to do a couple more quick hits because they really bugged me as a reader. So, first off, don't cliche females. Oh my gosh. And I guarantee there's like 3 or 4 women in the audience like, yeah. But people do it, and there are female writers that do it too. And because it is so much easier to just write the female as a damsel in distress, or the sex pot, or the skilled individual. Now that's one that a lot of people don't really recognize and drove us crazy. People would have a character who's a female or whatever and say, okay, well, tell us about her. Well, she's a doctor. Okay, what else? She's a woman and she's a doctor. What more does she have to be? I mean, that's a good enough character right there. But that happens so often. People think, and it does happen with male characters too, but you see it much more often with female characters. You've got a female scientist, you got a female whatever chemist, and it's just, that's it. There's no other depth to the character. So don't do it. Don't cliche your males either. If we're going to cover it, don't cliche them either. Second, villains. Villains, I love talking about villains. Villains are my favorite characters to write. They're so much fun. They're so much fun to write. And it's not because I like writing about guys in dark cloaks with skulls all over them and fire, and no. That's not the fun part. The fun part is you take a character that's super evil, super mean, total rat bastard, and you make people like them. That is the best feeling in the world. You look at the movie The Dark Knight. The Joker is a charming character. He's interesting and he's fun to watch. If you've ever watched the show Futurama, the character Bender does stuff that is horrible. He robs, he kills, he says that if you took a line of dialogue out, things like, I'm going to stab you when you're not looking, is terrible in an alternate context, but he's hilarious, so we let it slide. A better example is say, so make them someone people will not necessarily, if they don't have to like them, empathize with them. If they don't have to empathize with them, understand them. Say Nurse Ratched, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Evil woman, arguably one of the greatest villains of all time. Because it wasn't about, that she had to be mean or that everything was great. It's that She put up the illusion of control behind wanting to help people, and that made it interesting to see how somebody who's in a job, she's a nurse, who's supposed to help people, who is under the illusion of helping people, is she thinks she's helping people. But with her, it's just about the control. It's about keeping the environment clean, keeping everything, under her firm grip, so to speak, and to see the lengths that she'll go to while keeping up that facade. That multiple layer makes it interesting, because you don't necessarily empathize with that. None of us would do that. Of course not. You don't like her. She's super evil. But you understand where she's coming from. If she loses control, that's it. That's the end of her universe. That's her stakes. Give stakes to your antagonist. What happens if the villain fails? If your villain has stakes that happen if they fail, if something like you look at the story afterwards, sure, we know what the hero does. He gets the girl. He goes off and he, lives in a castle for the rest of his life. What happens to your villain? If something happens to them and you empathize with them, you've created a solid, fantastic antagonist. Oh, I'm going to tell you a secret. Okay, so I know Deus Ex Machina, MacGuffins, things that solve your story. Those things used to drive us crazy as readers. It would be, people were fighting aliens and they were overrun and they were trapped and they're down to their last bullet in their gun and they're surrounded and they go, oh, look, it's this crystal ball. Oh, we win. Happens all the time. Everyone loves that MacGuffin. Here's the trick. Just put it in earlier in your story. You'd be surprised. Look, the Avengers. I mean, the Tesseract could have been called the MacGuffin Cube. It has no relation to the story. It's something they invented. They did the same thing in the second Thor movie, the MacGuffin Red Cloud. It's something that they just invented, but you put it in the beginning of your story, you have people talk about it, you give it a little bit of a background, and all of a sudden you've got a tool you can use later. Which leads me to my second part. This applies to MacGuffins, and it applies to supernatural stories. If you're writing about aliens or science fiction or whatever, please explain what's going on. Please do it. This biggest pitfall of science fiction fantasy stories is that you'll have aliens show up or zombies show up and then you have no idea what's going on. With zombies, I'll leave them out because nobody explains zombie movies, and when you do, it makes it worse. But, they're not really zombies. They have a disease. Shut up. With supernatural stories, even if you never actually really explain it, you have to know. You've got to know where you're coming from. If there was an asteroid that landed and they came here and they were a little life form, or they're originally from water on Mars, or whatever it is, if you know that information, and here we go back to the layers, if you know that information, it's going to affect your story. And it'll do it when you least expect it. This is the same with your protagonist, your antagonist, your side characters, everything in your story. If you've gone back and you've built those layers, you've got that extra information, all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, my character wouldn't do that because of this. My character was going to do that. Oh my gosh, they're in this situation. They're in a coffee shop. Of course they're going to throw their mug on the ground because they were in here a week ago. They're allergic to soy. I don't know. Maybe their girlfriend works behind the counter. It's all of these things that add layers to your character. When you go in and you say, I'm wrapping it up, Marianne, don't worry about it. I'm totally at the end, which is awesome because I was worried. But, again, that's the biggest thing I can stress. Go back, take your characters, figure out what it is about them that makes them special. Figure out what it is about them that you don't like about them. Figure out what it is, what's their favorite food, what's, their favorite movie, what's their favorite thing to do on the weekends. Ask these questions. One of them, I guarantee you one of them will work. Go and get one of those, and I use this for a character in a action movie I'm attached to, is I went and I did the INTJ or whatever that... Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs, yes, the Myers-Briggs test, and I put the character through the Myers-Briggs test. And if there was a question I couldn't answer, I went back and I wrote more about that character because it just didn't work. I got a character for a movie that is a sexy female assassin. That's what I was given, and I'm all like, oh, no, this is going to be terrible. But you can't do that if you're a writer. You can't do that if someone says, I'm going to pay you to write something. You got to get in there and dig it out. And so you got to work on the backstory. You got to build from that character. You got to ask these questions, whatever it takes. If you like taking personality tests, if you like whatever, going online and finding out what, I don't know, what Finding Nemo character you are on Playbuzz or whatever, BuzzFeed. Go on there. Put your character through it. These are real people. The more real your character is, the better they will be. And I'm going to finish with just one thing. And everybody says this. Everybody says this. But it is so true. Write every day. Every day. I mean, I don't bring a notebook with you. Get on your laptop. I am serious. That is the #1 problem. I ask people, why haven't you got your script done? Oh, I mean, well, I haven't written it. Okay, well, why not? Oh, I just, I went to Starbucks the other day and I had a coffee, but then I thought, oh, I'll go play miniature golf, and I was hanging out with my buddy, and we went to a brewery opened, and constant excuses, right every day. It sounds so simple, but you just gotta do it. You've just gotta commit to it, whatever it's a schedule. Find a writer's group. If you need to, get a business card from me. Email me and say, hey, I haven't written. And I'll send you emails, and I'll ask you, hey, how many pages did you write today? You tell me no, I'm going to send you an angry email. And then I'm going to ask you what your character's favorite breakfast is. All right, that's it for me. Thank you guys so much for having me up here.
Travis, thank you very much. Wow.
He'll be sticking around for questions and answers
Yeah.
after the next speaker.
But I think, Augie, you want to introduce Frank? Frank has a computer to hook up, so there'll be a moment in there. And is there somebody's notes I can cheat off of from Travis's talk? Okay. Watch the video. All right.
Going to talk to us about storyboarding. I know Frank from multiple 48-hour films that we've worked on. He's worked on other films, some sci-fi movies and some Hollywood productions. And so he also went to Full Sail, he studied at Full Sail University, and he right now is working for Pixel Games. Is that right? Pixlwise. And they make video games. And so he will show us and tell us about storyboarding and how important it is for story, no matter what your product that you're making. So let's give Frank a nice hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Augie. Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Silas. I'm two things. I'm a creative director for video games and a producer-director for films, both shorts and features. On the video game side, I've been in video games for almost 20 years. I've worked at Rockstar Games and Sony and Activision Blizzard on some games you may have heard if you play games. And as a creative director, that's sort of like being a director for film, but my output is a video game. On the other side, for film, I've been doing that for over 15 years now, and I'm currently in negotiations to direct my first feature film as a solo director. I've done co-directing on an animated feature film before, but as a solo director, this will be a $30 million film, so that'll be a role when it's announced in Variety, and you'll see it on Slated, so that's coming up. And I'm super stoked on that because, it's the impossible thing to do is to achieve your dreams, make it happen by working really hard. Let's see here. I'm going to be talking about storyboards. It's really important for you as a writer, okay, not just an artist or just a director, but to have your vision be translated correctly to the screen. There's a lot that gets lost in translation if you do not storyboard. That's why most of the major film directors are storyboarding their stuff. It's a standard tool that is used often. So let me get on script here. Let's see. Okay, now the importance goes way beyond that. A screenplay is fantastic. It is your foundation. It's like you're building a house, but people don't go to the movies to look at the foundation. They go to the movies, they look up on the screen, they're not seeing words, they're seeing images. So if your words are not descriptive enough to actually paint a picture in people's minds, then your screenplay isn't holding water. And even if it is super great, and it may be, you still need to convert that to an image so that everyone working on your film or the people that are paying you money to make that film all agree that this is the picture, this is the image we're going for right now. Okay, that's why storyboarding is so important. And everyone says, okay, well, what if I don't have the skill? What if I don't have the talent? Storyboards, you can do them for you can have different objectives. Now, if you don't have a lot of time or the skill, then do it quickly. You can use circles and squares or cubes, like circle for a head, a cube for a body. Generally, what you're trying to achieve there is the blocking. Like, where's the camera? Where are the characters or other objects in the scene? That's just what you're trying to do, and you can do that relatively quickly, okay? So like when you're shooting a 48-hour film, you don't have a lot of time to do a storyboard. You have maybe hours, maybe, but not very many. So you do it quickly because you bring down the level of quality knowing that you need to get it done quickly. But if you have more time, you have, a few days or a week, then spend more time doing not just blocking, but actually the composition, the visual composition within the frame, meaning everything that's in the frame is trying to affect the feeling you want the audience to have. Because that's what you're doing. You're doing it from the words you write as a script, from the images that are on the screen. It's designed to make the audience feel a certain way. That's critical. If you're not doing that, we're failing. Okay? If you have even more time, you can actually do a comic book version of your screenplay. Okay, you can actually do photorealistic images or paint, which I do those things. This is my work. What you see up here is a blog that I created. It's a microblog because it's actually on Twitter, but I spent the last year researching what makes images cinematic. From a still image, because essentially that's what a storyboard is. It's a sequence of still images. That's what a film is. When you put enough of those together and you run them quickly, it looks like things are moving, but it's a sequence of still images. So there are characteristics to cinema, visually, that inform the viewer that, hey, I'm watching a movie. And if you don't incorporate those things into your film, into your storyboard, it's not going to look like a movie. A lot of people will shoot a film, it'll be on video or an iPhone, and sometimes you see that stuff and you're like, wow, that was extraordinary, it looked like a film. But most other people do that, it doesn't look like what you see at the box office. It's because they're uninformed to the language of cinema. I don't know if that's plugged into my power. But so it's really, really important. You want to understand editing and how that affects the language of cinema, because that is the language. It's how the images are next to each other and how quickly they move, where the camera is positioned. Like if you have a character in a scene and the character is sad, you might want the camera up looking down at the character to say that, okay, now the audience is looking down on this character. And if you pull back further and you see the character is all alone, then you're saying that the character is all alone, but you're doing it visually. You're having the audience feel those things. So no matter how great that screenplay is, if you cannot convert it visually, because the visuals are what's going to be on the screen, what's the point? Okay, let's see here. Talked about the different types. Oh, there's a really great book. It's called Star Wars Storyboards Original. Came out last year. Have you guys seen that? Cool. I think I have it up here. I tried to pull things up here. There we go. It's on Amazon. It's relatively cheap. But literally, they took all the cards, which you'd have like a index card on a corkboard for the entire movie, from beginning to end. So literally, you could stand in a room and look at the movie. Imagine that. Imagine shooting your film without turning on a camera, without spending a dime. I think that's pretty phenomenal. That's one of the reasons why I'm right now in negotiations to direct a $30 million film, because I showed the people who are going to pay for the film, this is what my plan is. This is what we want to shoot. This is what it's going to look like. That's critical. George Lucas, as you know, doesn't really draw. He got someone else to do it. That's totally fine. Get someone else to do it. But what I'm saying is don't skip that step, because film is a visual medium, and it's not an expensive, or it's not an inexpensive proposition. It's very expensive. Even though you can grab your DSLR, you can get together with your friends, you can shoot a film on a weekend. I've seen it done it myself for shorts. Actually, we shot this zombie film with Chesney and Mr. We shot it in like 4 days, maybe 5 days. And I think we spent about $30,000, $40,000 on this film. It went to 30 different festivals. The kid who stars in it, he's currently in X-Men. He's Warpath. It's Boo Boo Stewart. And the lady in it, she was in Star Trek. But you can shoot a film within a relatively short period of time and have something extraordinary if you know what you're doing. If you're paying attention to what makes films great, not just visually, but definitely in your screenplay. But this, I'm up here talking about storyboards. You've got to reach that point where you can actually have your vision on the screen. And that's important because everyone you work with is going to want to do their movie. You know, if I say dog, everyone in here has a picture in their mind about what a dog is. Is that the dog you want in your film? You better be sure. So I showed you that microblog, which is going to be at Mini Comic Movies. Literally, there are links here to entire films, entire courses online. You can just scroll through that. Like I said, it took me like a year to compile all this information. I should have put a mouse on this thing. But we've done a film. We won an award. We're going to Filmapalooza for a short that we shot. This is not bragging, but scroll down and you'll actually see comic book stuff. One of my friends, his name is Kevin Grevious. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a screenwriter and an actor. He stars in Underworld. He's a really tall African-American guy who turns into a werewolf. Well, he's actually a screenwriter. He co-wrote those films. He has optioned well over 12 films in the past 9 years or so. And as you know, a real option is $100,000 or more. They announce it in Variety and other Hollywood magazines. Every time they have a screenplay, they create a comic book version of it. It's faster to read. It's an easier read, which is a big thing you're going to hear about screenplays. It needs to be an easy read because people don't want to read it if it's hard, or if it's difficult, if it looks like it's going to take a long time. And a comic book is an easy way to do that. So in this particular microblog, I am investigating the relationship between comic books and film, but also comic books and storyboards. And that's a long story I can go into, but let's see. I list a bunch of comic books on here, a bunch of comic book artists who are doing really cinematic work. But I've also created, let me find it. Let's see. Here we go. This is over on PictoChart. You can go and download this. Ask me later and I'll give you the link. But it's actually 6 cinematic elements that you need to have in order for your images to look like it's a real movie. Okay? And literally, I totally made this whole chart. We talk about aspect ratio and editing and how that affects how people view what their, your film or the images they're seeing. Optical aberration, which is the camera has a lens and a film back, and there are certain things that you see when you look at film. You're expecting certain things. Unless it's a digital camera, you're not expecting a lens flare on a digital camera, but we're used to seeing that. We're used to seeing smuts on the camera. We're used to seeing a bunch of different things. We're used to seeing curvature of the image, and there's film grain. These are things that if you're not shooting with a traditional camera, you probably want to add some of these things back into your film. We talk about color grading, which I have here. A lot of people will shoot films, and they don't look like real movies because they didn't color grade. A color grade is something that you can do with a storyboard also. It's called a color key, where throughout the storyboard, you say, okay, I'm going to start the film off cool, and right here, where there's a big amount of action, things are going to be orange and heavy and hot, and then it's going to cool down a little bit into the greens over here, somewhere in Act 3, and then, toward the end of Act 3, everything's going to be nice, cool, and blue. You can really key the audience's emotions visually, because people feel color. And that's why they control what colors are on the set, what characters are wearing, what those colors are, how the background is. All that stuff is controlled, and you need to be thinking about it. And that's something that you can tackle in a more developed storyboard. Now, if you're doing another storyboard, like it's got to be fast and dirty, then you're just doing circles and squares. You're not looking that far down the road. You're just trying to get that done for your blocking. Let's see. And yeah, as he said, with dialogue, subtext is key. Subtext is not just for dialogue. Subtext is the character themselves, like the situation that they're in. Subtext is what they want versus what they're actually doing or how they're trying to get it. Subtext is where real acting happens. If you don't have subtext within your screenplay, you can have subtext in a storyboard. But if you don't have that, real actors don't want anything to do with that screenplay because you're not giving them anything. You know, when an actor is walking across the stage, if they're just walking around, okay, I got to stay close to this mic, but that's not very exciting. But if they're walking around and they're smoking, and every once in a while they do something else, that's kind of weird, but I'm going to do that, then that makes it a bit exciting. And the real acting comes in when they're saying something, but they mean something else, but perhaps they have some other motive altogether. That's life. And it's our instincts as humans to understand what that is, our emotional intelligence, because we know we're in trouble right now because we're with a bad person. They're saying they love us, or they're saying they're going to treat us kindly, or they're saying everything's going to be okay, and they have a knife in our butt, in our gut, in our face, in our neck. You know? Then you obviously know that person doesn't mean those things. And that's the kind of stuff you want to deal with definitely in a screenplay, and definitely in your storyboard, because you can actually have words with the storyboard. Now, storyboards, a little bit of history, they were pioneered by Disney back in the 1930s. Probably everybody knows that. Obviously, storyboards were being used before that, but Disney mastered the art form. And that's why I brought this. It's a book called Paper Dreams, The Arts and Artists of Disney Storyboards by John Canmaker. I don't know if I'm saying that last name correctly. But if you pick this up, you can see some of the best storyboards you're ever going to see, along with that Star Wars book. If you are worried about your skills as an artist, there's this book called Drawing Ideas. Drawing an art is kind of like cooking. Everybody can do it, but not everybody's going to be Chef Puck. Okay, so get over it, make it happen. You know, but this book makes it super easy. It goes over perspective and grids on the ground and how you can position things on that grid so that you can get pretty easy perspective and have it look like your camera is in three-dimensional space, even though you're drawing in 2D. Makes that stuff easy for you. Okay. And there are different programs you can use to make storyboards. The most popular is an index card on corkboard, which at my work, where I'm working on games, literally, I have a wall about as big as that wall right there. It's literally covered with nearly 1,000 index cards. Because my boss, much like the producers that are going to pay for the movie that I'm going to work on, he is a salesman. And as a CEO, that's his job. He sells. He doesn't know about art. He doesn't know about how to develop a movie or video games. So when I talk to him about video games in this case, he doesn't see what I'm telling him. So him reading a script or reading the game design doc, that's out the window. He doesn't see it. So literally, I have to show him, literally, and say, right here in this frame, this happens. Right here in this scene, this happens. And then he goes, I don't want that, I want this. Or he goes, this is exactly what I want. This is genius, which hardly ever happens. But every once in a while, he'll say something nice. But the same thing happened on the film side with the producers. You know, they're often salespeople. They've often acquired their wealth in other industries. They know they like a good movie when they see it, but when they see a good movie, they're not seeing words. They're seeing images. So show them images. So yeah, back to what I was saying about Kevin, with his, like every time they come out with a screenplay, it has a comic book version, and it gets read, and he has a lot of screenplays optioned. So with Christian, he used other artists to do his storyboards. He just directed his first feature film. It stars Norman Reedus and Yaman Hunsu, and Robert Kirkman is producing. Okay, I did my first 3 shorts with him. So, and that's how important this is. So I'm not going to embarrass anybody by saying, hey, please raise your hands who has never drawn their own storyboard. I'm not doing that. But think about it, because what you're doing is you're leaving your vision up to other people. But that's why James Cameron, who knows he's a jerk, will tell you he's a jerk. He's a jerk for those very reasons. His vision ends up on the screen every time. So let's see here. Okay. So I told you about the Twitter and the mini comic movies. I told you about the Picto chart. Yeah, right here I've even created a Prezi, which talks about the different elements of story, which are not really required, but it's made of the best stuff that you see in cinema. Like if you watch a movie, you could break it down into these different categories and these different elements, and you want to do that in your storyboard. You want to have it there. So that literally, if you watch the Pirates of the Caribbean, there's an outtake on Pirates of the Caribbean 2. It's on the second disc, where they show Gore Verbinski. He's standing in a room, and he can turn around, and literally, this is the photorealistic storyboard. He can see the entire movie from beginning to end in a room. It's not an inexpensive proposition to make a movie. Okay? So say your movie is $500. Get some guy to do it for free if you can't do it yourself. You know what I mean? Obviously, if your movie is millions, then you're going to pay tens of thousands of dollars, or maybe a bit more, especially if you're working on a visual effects extravaganza, to have this pre-visualization done. And that's what it is. You're pre-vising the movie. So back to other ways to do a storyboard. You can actually animate your storyboard. It's called an animatic, where you take your storyboards and put them into After Effects. Pretty sure you've seen that. Pixar does that a lot on their DVDs. There's a 3D previs, which if you know someone who's a 3D artist, they can literally shoot your movie virtually, do blocking and lighting and texture and all that kind of stuff, and you can run it. You can see it virtually before ever rolling film. Okay? So by not doing this, you're really robbing yourself. Some free applications online. There's one called Paper for the iPhone. Hopefully you've heard of that. It's a really easy program to use. It feels like ink or pencil and paper. You can do some pretty decent storyboard stuff with that. You can do storyboard stuff with Celtics, although it's primarily a screenwriting program, so you've probably seen it. It's free, but for Mac and PC. Let's see. Oh, Filmmaker IQ. I'm not related to them. I don't know them, but I went to their site, and along with my research, this site provides an extraordinary amount of information on filmmaking. Let's see, do I have it up here? Oh, nope. I don't have it on this one. But it's called Filmmaker IQ. Definitely go there. There's an entire section, because I only have 30 minutes. There's an entire section on storyboarding where literally it's a course, like a college course, where it's like hours and hours. But not only do they break it down for storyboarding, they do it for cinematography, they do it for editing, they do it for makeup, they do it to tell you why popcorn is being sold in theaters and how popcorn saved movies once. Literally, they explain the whole history of that. And they go in depth about many different genres of film, what are the primary genres, why genre is important. They break it down. So that's really, really good stuff. And when you do a storyboard, if you're thinking about genre, like you're doing a monster movie, you don't want to have a bright color key. If you're putting colors on it, or the way you're using your light, it should look like a horror movie. You know, there's things that people do, and they're like, well, I'm going to, like he said, I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to mix genres, like it's going to be an alien invasion Western. How many times has that worked? Did that work? No, and that was Spielberg producing. No, there's a lot of stuff that gets made, I will admit. And I'm sure when you're looking at stuff, you're like, okay, how in the world could money have been spent on that and I didn't get my film made? What the heck? The other person probably did a storyboard. Probably. They were able to convince whoever had the money to give them the money to make the thing that they made. So, and that's what I'm trying to help you get done here. So let's see, so we talked about this. You can download that. You can download this. It shows what the references are. Yep, how to emotionally engage the audience. Told you about the blog. Oh, there's a few free programs online that you can use. One, it's not free, but it's only like $25. It's called Mischief. And it's a vector program, but it looks like you're painting in Photoshop. So you can paint stuff and it's photorealistic, or you can draw stick figures or whatever you want to do in there. But it's vector, which means when you print it out, there's no size limitation. I mean, you can print it out and put it on the sides of a building, or you can print out and put it on a stamp. Normally when you create an image, it's in a bitmap program, and you've probably seen where if you zoom into an image, it gets pixelated, or you see little squares. Well, with a vector program, you never see little squares. You can zoom into it infinitely or zoom out of it infinitely. Well, there's a program that does that where you can do photoreal work if you're to that level. It's like about 25 bucks or so. I would check it out. It's called Mischief or Made with Mischief. But that way, when you're doing your storyboards, if you can embellish them to do stuff like this one's not mine, but I thought it was a really good example. This is like really close up. It's kind of messy looking, right? But if you pull back from it, you don't have to be perfect. Just try it. I mean, if you look at matte paintings, which is old school style matte paintings for film, meaning like if you see a background which is painted and there's people actually walking in front of it, which is a technique which is still used today. We do it digitally in most cases. But if you look at some of the older films, you'll see literally painted matte paintings in films. If you zoom into them, it's kind of messy. But you know what I mean? Try stuff, do it. You'll really be surprised. Because like I said, it's like cooking. Really, everyone can do it. Not everyone's going to be Picasso or Michelangelo, but you can do it well enough to make sure that your vision is what ends up on the screen. Because your crew needs to understand what it is you want to accomplish. The people paying you needs to understand. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Frank, it's Connie Fuller.
Hey.
This also works for corporate videos as well, to try, because the people that are asking you to do the project are not Steven Spielberg.
Right.
And they're, they may not have any idea what you're doing. So helping them understand your concept, because if they're just reading the script, they don't, in many cases, they don't get, they just don't understand what they're reading.
Oh yeah, they're not creatives.
Corporate piece is an excellent way of getting your point across and getting the buy-in so that there's no changes on the back end.
Right, and that was one of the big reasons with my CEO, where he would make changes and then I would go, and he would go, I didn't, all right, I want to change it again. But he has to at least admit that he's making the change. Because before that, he was like, you don't understand what I want, or you're not doing what I'm asking you to do, and literally I'm like making all this stuff and the art is like finished. It's like the work is like done. And he's like, that's not it. And I'm like, that's what you said. And he's like, no, I wanted a dog. And I said, that is a dog. He says, well, I wanted a chihuahua. And I'm like, this is a Saint Bernard. Back to that comparison. But anyway, so check out that program. Let's see. I gave you resources. I've given you some different apps. We talked about different types of storyboards. We talked about the difference between if you need to do it fast, if you have more time, like a medium amount of time, or if you're just going to go nuts, which is hopefully where you're at if there's any real money involved. We talked a little bit about my history, about what's going on with me. We talked about history of storyboards. I gave you these two resources. I'm trying to make sure I got you. I'm trying to hook you up.
Pencil, 53, are you familiar with it?
53.
Same people make paper.
The company.
Yeah, the company makes paper, they make a pencil, it's called 53, and you can draw, you can basically do all your storyboards on your iPad. It's awesome. It's the most amazing thing.
I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
Right on. Did you hear that?
It's called 53. Just go to 53.com.
You buy a pencil.
It's a pencil, electronic, and you can write on your iPad. It's amazing tool for storyboarding.
Yeah. I would have that, but I use a Wacom tablet.
Yeah.
I usually plug it into my computer and I go nuts with that. But it has a stylus with that. So, and this will save your wrist from the mouse, from the tyranny of the mouse. But does anyone have any questions? Because I think we have about 5-6 minutes. Yeah.
Do you want to bring them both up?
Sure.
Do you have an example of a finished storyboard with a page of it?
I went to, let's see.
It's really tiny on the screen. Could you blow it up?
Yeah, this is called screencrush.com, because I knew someone was going to ask that question. You can go here, and there are storyboards of movies that you've seen. Just like I showed you that storyboards for Star Wars, on screencrush.com, you can look at storyboards from all kinds of movies. You're welcome. Screencrush.com. Yes.
Basically, what do you think about how a lot of times now it's going more into
previous conversation in the computer rather than hand sketching. Is that something you see often, or?
Yes, I'm kind of biased because I started off as a 3D artist, like I said, in video games, so I can do that kind of work. If this clicks over, like my company won a BAFTA last year, my previous company. But these are like samples of my work, and I do 3D and 2D work. So it starts off in 2D where I'm doing stuff, but then 3D, we're literally, like I said, I could literally do an entire movie virtually in the computer. That's going to pop up at some point, I think. There we go. This is modeled in Maya, textured in Photoshop, and this is actually in Unreal Engine 4. This is for Transformers Dark of the Moon video game. Based on the movie, we were actually getting assets from ILM, like Megatron and all those guys. And some of them were impossible to open on your computer because they were like millions of billions of polygons. But we were like repurposing them for the video game. But we were building other things from scratch. But yeah, I'm kind of I'm biased. So I love both. Either way, I see as a director, if I can move the camera around, that's more valuable for me. It's more valuable to my DP and my cam op, my cinematographer, if they can see the camera moving and they know where things are going to happen. Otherwise, you're going to do them anyway, but you do the little charts about where the camera is, where it's pointing, where the characters are going to be looking for eye lines. There's actually a program for iPhone for that too. But you're going to do all that stuff anyway. It's all the stuff that a director does to prepare for a film. Like the director is probably one of the hardest working people on the set because they've been working on that film years before anybody else was on set. Question?
How do you as a writer communicate to the director and then to the story?
I use storyboards. That's how I communicate. No, that is a. Exactly, and it's hard to find that exact step of where to go. And it's like I said before, you don't want to include camera movements. You don't want to include, okay, this person, whatever, anything like that. You want to you can paint a picture. However you describe a particular scene, it's going to be different with everybody. Some people use very brief descriptions. Some people go into huge detail. All you got to do is, if you have put enough time and effort into that scene, you've got to be able to paint, not paint, but you paint, and then I'll paint with words. There we go. So,
you're actually creating a picture in the person's mind.
Exactly. It's like he said when he said, picture a dog. Everybody's going to think of a different dog. Everyone's going to think. Some people think of a German Shepherd. Some people think of a Pomeranian or whatever. I like Pomeranians. I think so, but. That's an important thing, is always just expand on that. If you have a scene where it's the same, like you mentioned before, if you want someone to be sad, and you say this person is just their girlfriend left, their Pomeranian died, you paint that picture, and it's not up to you to say, okay, I want the camera to look down on them, I want the light to be cast down on them, I want the background to be blue, Exactly. If you want rain, put rain in there. If you want them to be in an empty village, put them in there. If you want them on the middle of the 405 freeway with no cars there, put them there. That is painting a scene. You just build all the way around it, find what is important to you, and then it'll come. It really will.
If the camera is a character, the environment is a character.
Absolutely. Any questions?
If you're going to think from the corporate side of things, because a lot of people here make their living working for somebody else and not doing their own personal projects. I remember when I was writing for a major corporation, I had a directing background, and I would I wrote way too much and would tie the director's hands, and there was always this battle between what me as the writer with the background of the director was putting into my scripts. Again, I had to learn that lesson the hard way. I was giving them way too much information so they couldn't go out and just shoot it the way it should have been shot.
That I've heard 1,000 times. It's like, you didn't shoot it the way I wanted it. It doesn't look the way I wanted it. The biggest thing you have to learn as a writer is sacrifice. something is going to get sacrificed. It's going to happen. Unless you are going to write, direct, act, I do the music, do everything, write the storyboards, draw them. If you're not going to do all of that, you're going to lose something. There's no way that you don't have an identical person out there who's going to do everything exactly the same way. There's going to be something, and you got to let it go. Sometimes it's something small. It's just a little change, and you sync up well. Sometimes it's something huge. Maybe a character that you love gets cut out. It's going to happen. The more you can accept that, the more you can just say, okay, my core element is there. Together, they've added something to it. Then you got a story. Then you got a film.
One more question? Two more questions?
Yes.
Yeah, I would ask, Frank, I've read a lot of negative press about wholesale, and I'm interested to find out about your experience, mainly the fact that it's so expensive.
Yeah, it's really expensive. It's kind of like going to Harvard for an art degree. However, I have to say they're one of the best funded, privately owned schools in the nation. Like literally, the sound studios, because they're a sister school at the Los Angeles Film School, which is where I was a professor at for like a year. And they have $1 million film studios. I mean, film production studios, but also music studios. Literally, like Jay-Z recorded an album there, Beyonce recorded an album there. When I was there, we had like major directors and actors coming through the school, giving lectures. And almost every week, like, oh man, I don't know what movie it is recently, but they just had Guardians of the Galaxy, like the director and the writer, come in and give a talk after they screened the film with the students. In the last graduation that I attended when I was there, I'm gonna forget his name, but he was a producer working on Cowboys and Aliens. And a student stood up and said, hey, I've always wanted to work with Steven Spielberg. How do I get on your film? And literally he said, what's your name? And the kid said his name. He says, show up at this place on Monday at this time. Don't be late. And literally that kid worked on that movie as a PA. So the schools are really great, but the problem is this. School in general, it's putting a lot of people in debt. And debt is bad. It's no matter what school it is. So if you can do it without getting into debt, do that. If you're going to have a problem with the debt, you're going to be working for years and years just trying to get out from the debt, and you're not going to get jobs right away. Unless you come out of school and you're just smoking hot and your portfolio is as good as the pros that are already working, because it's an employer's market. They can pick and choose who they want to hire. And when they can't get enough people, they outsource to China, where they can hire 30 of you for what they're paying you. And they're pretty good, you know? So that's a problem, and it's in all industries, not just the creative industry. A lot of stuff is being outsourced, and it's hurting everybody. Question? But the schools are good, they're just really expensive, I agree.
I had a question about, as you're developing characters, how do you keep track of that? Do you like make a poster on your wall and write notes on it, or?
It's different for everybody. I love Google Docs and I love Trello. Those are my two. Trello, I've got boards on board. Trello is like a it's got little cards and you can track things there. And it's free to use, Trello.com, Trello. And then I just use Google Docs. For me personally, I do kind of like if I'm being honest, I used to be a Dungeons and Dragons nerd. Used to be. I totally didn't just play last weekend. So so I like to break down characters that way. I start with simple like name, what are their likes, what are their dislikes, and then I make a list. That works for me. I have a friend who uses employment applications. Like he'll get an employment application online and answer the questions as the character, and that works great for him. And so there's lots of different ways. I can't tell you one specific one that works for me. Like I said, it's the list. I've got to ask questions about the character. If I don't think that the character's deep enough, I ask another question. Again, so there's lots of different ways to go from there. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm not affiliated with this other site either. It's called Screenwriting U, with a U, like a red U at the end. Not university, Screenwriting U. I have a couple of friends that have gone through that course. It's like a year-long course, but they've had their screenplays options, like announced in Variety, $100,000, 1 year option. From going through this course. It's intense, but they teach you to write a financially viable screenplay, because this is a business. If you do not write a character that a major star wants to play, you're not getting major stars in your film. If you didn't have subtext in your dialogue, if you didn't have subtext for the situation of the character, if you didn't have subtext for the environment itself that the characters are in, because the environment is a character, your script is not as strong as someone else's script. But they teach you all that stuff. It's called Screenwriting U. But for me, as an artist, what I do first is I will write a story, and once I have the story, I break down the characters and do bios or backgrounds on them, and literally, I start by writing for subtext. I say, okay, what is the subtext of this character? An example would be Sarah, she's a cheerleader in high school who's deeply in love with her best friend, who doesn't know she's in love with her best friend, but she also has a crush on her teacher. Okay, her teacher is secretly a serial killer who's killing kids in the school, but outwardly he's very loved in public, but he really hates the kid that Sarah has a boyfriend on. So his boyfriend wants to be a CSI agent. He's an investigator. He's trying to find out why the kids got killed in school. So then, okay, now with the subtext, if all three of them are in the same room, you can have her telling him that she really likes him and she really wants to be with him, but what she's actually saying is, I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life with you, but she never says that. You know, she's a teenager. Who says that? Okay, and you have this kid who's like, you know, he's all ignoring her because he's interested in, you know, figuring out how these murders were committed, you know, and then you've got the teacher watching them. And you see that teacher watching them, and if you're familiar with the subtext, you know that teacher's not just watching them. He's a serial killer. If he comes over and puts his arm around the girl, things just got a little sinister. See, I just mixed it all up for you. I can see I'm blowing minds. Subtext.
All right, I got to finish with one. There's a story that I have to tell. It's really, really quick, I swear. And it's actually, this is a story that Ricky Gervais tells, and you may have seen the YouTube video, but it happened to me too, and so I'm going to paraphrase my version of it. When I was in school, I needed to come up with an idea for a screenplay, and they're like, come up with something exciting. I'm like, okay, cool. Okay, I'm going to do this. It's going to be about an assassin, and he fights zombies, and it's going to be on the moon. And it's amazing. It's the most bombastic ideas I could think of. It's going to be the greatest script ever. And I wrote the outline, or like one-page outline. I turned it in, and he's like, this is awful. This is just terrible. And he told me with the same thing. He must have told Ricky Gervais the same thing. But he told me, he's like, write about something like that's honest to you. Okay, what does that mean? You know, write about something that happened. Just write about something that happened, that actually happened, that sticks out in your mind. And so I was like, okay. And I'm like trying to think, okay, well, whatever. I'll write about my neighbor. I had this neighbor. I was growing up in Fallbrook, and every day, she'd walk out of her house at like 3 p.m. She'd sit on this little wall, and she'd take out a bag of chocolate-covered, I think they were espresso beans or whatever, and she'd sit there and just eat them and just stare off into space for like a half hour every single day. She'd roll up the bag, she'd get up, go back inside the house. So I wrote about her and how she took, you know, the care with it and what it was all about. I didn't figure out why. I'm so sorry. But you want to know. You want to know. That is a million times more interesting than, you know, zombie assassin on the moon. You know, which one of those is more likely to actually maybe even become a movie one day? You want to see the zombie. I go, shut up, Marianne. We don't all have Spielberg money. But anyways, thank you guys so much.
You guys are awesome. Very good. I have my script that I've been working on forever. I ran it through. I have some friends of mine. Their kids are writers, going to school, want to be writers, and so I actually opened up to them one time and started fleshing it out and realized I had a short story and not a movie. So maybe I can learn a few more things here. Well, I thank you, everybody. Thanks again, Travis and Frank. One more big round of applause for them. Thank you. Next month, the fourth Wednesday of the month, please join us again for the next meeting. Thank you.